Hello everybody and welcome to the GMS Magazine YouTube channel. This is Top 2 Tips, the show in which a bunch of us are going to give you our top 2 tips on some topics related to role-playing games. Today, our top 2 games that we think should get a new edition. You game? An awful lot of games come and go, and they have the moment of glory and then they fade away, and when we revisit them sometimes we feel, this game with these new rules that have been invented since could be really cool. Either the theme wasn't used properly, or maybe just was rushed out a little bit. Sometimes it happens so many times. Or maybe those games were so good to start with that we should see them reprinted, and we can't for reasons like licenses, or because the author is not interested in it anymore, or whatever it is. We thought we would revisit some of those games, and we're gonna talk to you about them right away. Before we do that, please remember to subscribe. Give it, down there, the subscribe button, and click, very important, on the bell button so you get notifications when we upload more videos, which will be very soon indeed. Now, before I let my colleagues tell you everything, and trust me, you want to wait until the end of the video because we have some really amazing games that should get a second edition, I'm going to tell you my top 2. One is a game that is based on Farscape. Like so. I loved Farscape when it came out, I think about 20 years ago now, give or take. I cannot really remember very well, but I think it was just when I moved to the UK and I was working in computer animation, and it was interesting because the Jim Henson company was participating in it with one of the characters that was half animated and half a puppet. The cool thing about Farscape as a setting is that it offered a really vast science fiction that was really dark. This army man, Crichton, gets lost using a new engine experiment. I know, that's not particularly original. And he just wants to come back home. I know, that's also not particularly original. But everything in that game, everything in that setting had depth. The characters were very well crafted. The whole universe was very well crafted. The notion that there was this literally 11 million species. Somebody did an eye test with a needle in Crichton's eye to check on the DNA and said, I have a database of 11 million species and yours is not there. The fact that Earth was this little hidden gem, I thought that was very cool. But then the relationship between the characters were quite interesting. The fact that some of them were thieves that went to be, you're not good in these planets, but you're kind of the Robin Hood, but not really. And we have an anti-hero here who's actually a bit of a coward, but is very important. It had an awful lot of depth. I don't think the game suffered because it's based on the D20 system. It came out when D20 was such a massive boom, and it needs a new edition. Trust me, take a look at Farscape and take a look at the series because it was just amazing. And the second one is Cthulhu Tech. This game wasn't all bad, but it had some issues. Cthulhu Tech was actually pretty good at taking the mythos into the not particularly far, not particularly near future, and it gave us a very plausible scenario if the mythos were real. And I liked that an awful lot. The fact that it mixed how people could use the mythos as well. It's not a matter of everything is completely unknown now. No, science has been able to evolve enough to allow us puny little humans to understand a tiny fraction of the mythos, and with that tiny fraction we can actually combat those things. We can actually, tell them, yeah, come and get us, baby. The supplements that it got weren't all that bad. Some of them actually very good, but it stopped. And it could do with a revival. It could do with ironing some of the issues it had, both in terms of rules, in terms of, the rapey nature of some of the classes and stuff like that. But yeah, Cthulhu Tech, I think, could be an absolutely amazing game. Don't get me wrong, it's a really good game, but it could be absolutely fantastic if it got the love and tender care that it thoroughly deserves. But let's go on to my friends and see what they have to say. And hold on until the end of the video, because I love to have you around in these videos and also showcase what you think should be your top 2 tips. And I'll explain at the end of the video how you can join us. I'll see you in a minute.
Hello, my name is Roberto Micheri, and this is my contribution to the topic on top 2 games that need a new edition. I'm going a little obscure, I think, for this too. These were 2 games I played in the 90s. One I played briefly, and another I played a lot of. But they were a lot of fun, and when I sat down to think about 2 games that need a new edition, these were the 2 I set my mind on. If you had asked this question 5 years ago, my answer would have been completely different. It would have been Torg, Rifts, Alternity, and all of those got new editions with varying levels of success. But for today, on 2019, the 2 games I think need a new edition are Underground and Justifiers. Let me talk to you about both of them. I'm going to start with Justifiers. This is actually the second book they printed on this series. There was an original book with a blue cover, monochrome, and it had pretty much the same beta animal person. This is a little gem. It was published by Starchild Publication Books. It's a very simple system, percentile based, but it's a lot of fun. You pretty much play a beta. It's a lab-grown human-animal hybrid that's used by the corporations to explore space. I don't think the first edition of this book had rules for humans. I don't recall, but there are rules for humans here. I just perused the book briefly and realized there were. Nobody ever played a human in my games. They all played betas, which were these animal types, and you had a whole long list of animal types. You could play bear, seal, mantis. It's not a great system. It was functional, but it had a great setting. The concept of the corporations, how they were described, and how hyperspace worked, and colonization. I thought it was a little bit like sci-fi cyberpunk in space. And I really dug it. I played a couple of games with this and really enjoyed it. So I would love to see it one more time in print with a different system, something more fitting to the style. I'd go with Savage World adaptation. That wouldn't be too hard, but I would love to have a new edition published and see what they can do with the concept. I think it's great. It speaks to people who like furries, people who like anthropomorphic animals. That's my first choice. And my second choice is Underground by Mayfair Games. I don't have the book with me. This is the Game Master screen, but you can get an idea of the look. It's a superhero game in a dystopian cyberpunk future. Very dark. When I first read it, I had just read Give Me Liberty books by Frank Miller and Dave Gibbons. I have my issues with Miller's later work, but I really enjoyed that in the 90s and his commentary on the world around him through this near future comic book. And I found a lot of Give Me Liberty in Underground. You pretty much play a superhero that's trained in virtual reality, a super being trained in virtual reality to think you're a superhero who works for a corporation. Very dark. I think in the times we're living right now with deforestation and politics taking a turn for conservatism and so on and so forth around the world, I think this would be a good time to really retake this game and re-release it. I wasn't a fan of the system. It was the Mayfair days where they used the same system they used for DC Heroes, etc. I'd love to see it with something more agile, something easier, like Mutants and Masterminds, for example. I would love to see a Mutants and Masterminds version of Underground. Those are my 2 books, my 2 games that I think need a new edition. I hope at least some of you agree with me. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Vince from Kalen's Corner here. Paco had asked us, a bunch of us, to do up some videos on what we figure the top 2 games are that require a new edition. For my sake, they're rather nostalgic games. They're a little bit older. Whether, I feel they need a new edition as much to update the rules to more modern gaming, but the settings themselves are somewhat timeless. So the first game is going to be purely nostalgia, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness from Palladium. While Palladium is still active, they're still producing their Rifts products. I think Ninja Turtles is a game in and of itself that requires a new edition. Maybe not the game itself, but definitely the setting. Game itself is older. It's definitely showing its age as far as mechanics are concerned, but the setting is timeless. So I think the setting itself can be brought up to speed with the newer editions. So it would be awesome to see. The second game is Hawkmoon, the original box set from the 1980s. This particular box set was first published in 86, I think it was. It's a fantastic game. It brought a lot of fun back when I used to play it in my younger days. The game itself has been re-released recently, back in 2007 by Mongoose Publishing. The original Chaosium, though, I find is better, even if the mechanics themselves are a little bit on the older side. With the advances that Chaosium have made with their basic role-playing, I think it's high time this particular setting in game got an update. It, with its sister game Elric, I think would be really a lot of fun. Combined games, the setting, everything. Michael Moorcock, his stories are still really great to read. I try to read them myself at least once a year. But I think it's high time, especially with the rise of science fantasy style games. It would be great to see a new edition of them. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. It's my first time doing these kind of videos, so thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you all soon. All right.
Hi, I'm Dave, and here are my top 2 games that need a new edition, or at least I think so anyway. First of all is the obvious one, James Bond. Oh my god, I love this game so much. It's awesome, and was a fantastic game when it came out. It's got a great system, and it is beautifully produced. I mean, you just have to look at the supplements for it. I mean, the artwork's fantastic, and they all came with really, really nice envelopes full of cool props and things like that. And it's just frustrating that there isn't another edition of it, because just a little bit of refining and speeding up of the thing to make it a bit more modern, which wouldn't really go against what the game system was already like, and then of course bringing it up to the Daniel Craig era, and it would be great. I am so frustrated that there isn't one already. And number 2, while I would normally go for, say, Ghostbusters, because I love the Ghostbusters RPG, and I'm frustrated there isn't a new one of that, but then it is one of those games that's almost perfect. It's really hard to improve on that one. Original Ghostbusters, of course, not the second edition. So for my second choice, I'm probably going to go with CJ Carella's Witchcraft, which, I mean, look at it, it's gorgeous. Look at that cover. And it's a brilliant alternative to World of Darkness if you don't like the World of Darkness setting. It's a lot more witchified, which is always good, but nothing's happened with Eden for ages. It's a bit frustrating because I used to love the Unisystem stuff, and if it was me personally, if I had a choice, I'd redo Witchcraft completely using Cinematic Unisystem, the game system that powered Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel and Army of Darkness. It's faster, it's more dramatic, and it's a lot more intuitive, I think, and doesn't get weighed down with too much dice rolling and stuff like that. It's a lot more whoosh, which would be great. So yeah, those are my top 2 choices.
Hello everyone, my name is Alice Peng, aka Lala Twiddle.
I'm Brandon Powers.
And together, we're the hosts of Babies with Knives podcast, as well as frequent regular contributors to Mike Lafferty's Banff podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about top 2 RPGs, yes, top 2 RPGs that should get a new edition. Brandon, why don't you kick us off?
First one I'm going to pick is a game that is near and dear to my heart. We've only played it a little bit, but we had a great time with it, and I see so much potential with it. And it's the Marvel Heroic role-playing game by Margaret Weis Productions. This was a fantastic game that wasn't so much set in a campaign play atmosphere, but instead taking these events that are so common in modern comic books and just making stories about them. They came out with the basic book that had the Breakout mini saga, which was six issues from the New Avengers, and made that into just this fantastic game. You would assemble a die pool based on the powers. You could control whether you were generating hero points or not based on the way that you would tag aspects. And it was just a really good time every time that we sat down and played it. The reason I want a new edition is it only lasted from early 2012 until 2013 that Margaret Weis got the license. They even had books that they were never able to print that were done. Mike Lafferty, I believe, wrote on one of those books that never came out. And it was fantastic fun, and I'd love to see it again, even if it's separate from the Marvel license. I know in the Cortex Hackers Guide we've got it, but I just want to see the game get a little more robust. Alice, what about you? What's your first?
My first is an old game that didn't see much airtime. It is In Nomine. It is a Steve Jackson game from 1997. And I will tell you, I am not a horror genre fan, but many years ago, I picked up this book, and I read it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to play it. I read through the expansion book that we have on the shelves as well, and then I just saw the game basically die. I know that there's a GURPS version of it as well, a GURPS adaptation, but I absolutely think that the setting is beautiful. For people who are interested in finding out a little bit about it, if you have a much more popular game that people might recognize would be World of Darkness. It's similar to World of Darkness, but you've got heaven and hell, and they've entered into a Cold War. And so, and everything that goes with the Cold War. You know, there's the mini battles, there's the we are not actually at war, but we're going to beat the snot out of each other and just not have it on record kind of thing. But there's the idea that you're just vying for the existence, and I just thought the setting was beautiful, and to some of the ways that things were written, I would like to see it come about again.
And not just Cold War as I remember it, but I mean the alliance that, you know, people would form because the characters could be the angels or the demons as I remember them.
Yes, and you could in your same group have the demons and, you know, the demons and the angels, and you're in that, you know, I'm working with you, and maybe my superiors like it, maybe my superiors hate it. And and the way that it interacts with the world, I thought was just really cool. So, Brandon, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is going to be a game that I have played minimally. Once again, actually, the Marvel Heroic I've spent lots of time with, just not necessarily playing. This game, I've read it about 4 or 5 times, but I played it almost never. And this is going to be Spycraft. Spycraft initially came out as Classic Spycraft in 2002, came out with a second edition in 2005. And for 2002, this is a D20 game, and this is during the D20 boom. And from the beginning, they were taking that D20 engine, but they were making changes to parts of it by inventing hero points, which hadn't really... It's at least my first introduction to hero points in a D20 core game. And they did a few other things, and it's just such a great genre of play. I mean, Mission Impossible is something that I grew up watching all the time, and this is a game that really does go out and model it. I've read that second ed book repeatedly, but haven't gotten to sit down and play. The thing is, they've been working on a third edition for years, and I'm talking 5 years, I think, is when I first heard about that. So I'm hoping, like I said, 2005 is when second ed came out, maybe the 15-year anniversary coming next year. That might be when they announce that they're going to be bringing third edition to Gen Con for us. Alice, what are you going to close us out with?
I'm going to be closing this out with Fireborn. Fireborn is an RPG that came out in 2004, and I fell in love with it immediately. I had begged for us to get it when I heard about the blurb, and I bought it, and I read through it. The game premise is that it is a urban fantasy mixed with high fantasy, and how they do that is you play characters from dual ages. You play characters from the modern world, and you could be a corporate CEO big shot in the modern world, and then your dual identity in the other is in the age of high fantasy. You have the soul of a dragon, and so you have scenes where you're playing in the modern day, and then scenes where you're playing in the fantasy world as a dragon, whether you've taken on the disguise of human form or something like that. But what you do in the past impacts the current day, and what you do in the current day impacts the past. And they had an interesting system. It was a bit on the clunky side. There were a lot of things, to be very honest, that needed to be cleaned up. I ended up GMing a Fireborn inspired game using another system because we found that the system was a little too clunky to be...
Also, we thought it was a little simple, as I remember it.
It was a little simple for us, yes. And so I would love to see a new edition, because it is actually a very unique concept compared to the thousands of games that are out there. To actively be playing in multiple ages and have that crossover interactive where your powers are improving, your plot lines change, you made an enemy as a dragon, and so there's an enemy CEO that wants to take you down, and he happens to be the dragon, the soul of the enemy that you had back in the day. That kind of stuff. And the game I ran for it was pretty awesome. I would love to see a new edition of this.
I was sad when that game stopped by a lot.
So, those are our top two. Thanks for joining
Alice,
us. Oh, wait.
I'm going to say, I noticed something in yours. The two games that you picked are very much, White Wolf type games, that World of Darkness game.
I have to confess a secret.
They are outside of that
some of those
specific
games
universe,
I
and I thought that's
myself,
interesting.
Well,
I had to choose different
I
games.
hope to see,
because,
more stuff.
For instance,
someday.
the 007 game,
Thanks for joining
I would
us.
have gone for that.
Bye.
Just like a shot. But Mr. Chapman got there first. Fine. Fair dues. Fair dues indeed. Anyway, if you would like to be in this show and, tell the world your top 2 tips, if you have a blog, a vlog, anything at all, and you would like to tell people, your top 2 tips, we'd love to have you around. Please do get in touch through our Facebook page. You can find us on GMS Magazine, and let us know what you would like to do, because this show is not about me, it's about everyone else. So please get in touch and join us. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, because we would love to have you around, and leave us your comment. Let us know what top 2 games you have that you think deserve a new edition. Seriously, I'd love to hear from you and hear what you have to say. Thank you for being there, and I will talk to you very soon. You game?